Marhaba wa ahla wa sahla fikum. I hope you're all well and having a wonderful day. This session is a follow-up session for the verb to buy. In this session, we will be conjugating the verb to buy with il, the preposition il, which means to or for. Let's have a look at how people tend to shorten the pronunciation. On the right hand side here, you've got the subject pronouns, and ana, which means I for masculine and feminine, inta, you masculine, inti, you feminine, nahna, we, into, you group of people, huwa, it's he, hiya, she, and hinna or humme, which is they. Great. Now if you have a look at the other side, we've got the past tense for the verb ishtara. Because it's a final weak verb, the R becomes a lighter then you add your conjugation. And here we've got the preposition il. So here we are going to practice the pronunciation between both the preposition il and the verb to buy. Let's have a look. So people would say ishtaret ilo, ishtaret ilo, ishtaret ilo, I bought for him. Ishtaret ilo. However, people tend to jump over the alif because it's an airy letter, and people would say ishtaretillo, ishtaretillo. So all these examples, as we're going to have a look at them and read them, you'll see a very common theme, which is people tend to drop or jump over the alif or the a sound there. The sound or a there. So ishtaret ilo becomes ishtaretillo. Let's have a look at the first conjugation. Ishtaret ilo, I bought for him. Ishtaret ilo, which is absolutely and perfectly fine, but people always in vernacular and dialect tend to give a different and easier pronunciation where they tend to shorten the sound, and that is something not unique only in Arabic, that is in all languages, because then in a bit you're going to ask, well, which one do I use? Both absolutely correct, just one. Here on the left hand side, people tend to not pronounce the a sound or the alif. So that's why, and that is purely a dialect thing, and that is the same in all languages where people would delete certain sounds or add certain sounds. For example, in British English, I sometimes hear people would say, I saw you, meaning I saw you. They add an extra R at the end of it, but then it becomes a completely different verb, means I saw you. Well, you didn't, because I'm still alive. That's a very basic example. And that is the same thing with all Cockney, Geordie and Scouse accents here in the UK, where people tend to pronounce or create their own vernacular or slang. But as I mentioned, as always, I'm not teaching you slang. This is the standard Levantine Arabic. It's not one dialect than the other. Everybody will be able to understand you. So it's not just one than the other. Let's go over the pronunciation. Ishtaret ilo would become ishtaretillo. Ishtaret ilhon. Ishtaret ilhon becomes ishtaretilhon. Ishtaretilhon. And the meaning, you bought for them. Ishtaret ilhon, you bought for them. You bought them. And now the conjugation with you feminine, I chose for you. Ishtareti ilna, you feminine, bought for us. Ishtareti ilna becomes ishtaretilna, ishtaretilna, ishtaretilna. So as you see, people tend to drop the alif and they join it straight away to the verb. Nahna ishtarena ilha. Nahna we, ishtarena we bought, ilha for her. Ishtarena ilha, we bought for her. And people will go and shorten the pronunciation, so it would become ishtarenalha. Ishtarenalha. Ishtarenalha, we bought for her. With you group of people, ishtaretu ilo, you bought for him. Ishtaretu ilo, people would tend to shorten and it will become ishtaretulo, 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 ishtaretulo. With he third person, ishtara ilkon, he bought for you group of people. Ishtara ilkon, ishtara ilkon, people would say ishtaralkon, 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 ishtaralkon. With she third person, ishtarat ili, she bought me, she bought for me. Ishtarat ili would become اشترت لي اشترت لي اشترت لي اشترت لي. Finally with هن, with they group of people, اشتروا إلك, they bought you masculine. اشتروا إلك, they bought for you masculine. اشتروا إلك, people would tend to shorten it and they will say اشتروا لك اشتروا لك اشتروا لك. Let's have a look at this back again. اشتريت إله اشتريت له اشتريت إلهن اشتريت لهن. اشتريتي إلنا اشتريتي لنا. اشترينا إلها اشترينا لها. اشتريتوا إله اشتريتوا له. اشترى إلكن اشترى لكن. اشترت إلي اشترت لي. اشتروا إلك اشتروا لك. The common theme here, as you see, is people tend to drop this sound for all of them. So what we are seeing here is people tend to drop the sound from the preposition L, and then they join the remaining to the verb, and they make the sound a lot more smoother and easier to pronounce. Now let's have a look at the same pronunciation with the present tense, the preposition il, with the present tense conjugated, and how people tend to soften the pronunciation. أنا بشتري إلك. أنا بشتري إلك, I buy for you feminine. بشتري إلك becomes بشتري لك. بشتري لك. بشتري إلك, I buy for you masculine. بشتري لك. بشتري لك. بشتري لك. بشتري لك. And the present tense would say بشتري إلك. بشتري إلك. And here بشتري إلك. And people tend to delete the sound from both and it becomes بشتري لك. بشتري لك. Now the conjugation with you feminine. بتشتري إله. بتشتري له. بتشتري إله. بتشتري له. With we بنشتري إلكن. بنشتري إلكن, we buy for you group of people, becomes بنشتري لكن. بنشتري لكن. The conjugation for you group of people. بتشتروا إلها, you buy for her. You group of people buy for her. بتشتروا إلها becomes, or people tend to soften the pronunciation, and the pronunciation becomes بتشتروا لها. بتشتروا لها. بتشتروا لها. The conjugation with he, third person. بيشتري إلنا, he's buying for us. بيشتري إلنا, he's buying for us, and becomes بيشتري لنا. بيشتري لنا, he buys for us. بيشتري لنا. هي بتشتري إلك, she's buying for you feminine. بتشتري إلك. بتشتري إلك. بتشتري لك. بتشتري لك. بتشتري لك. So بتشتري إلك, people would soften the pronunciation and it will become بتشتري لك. بتشتري لك. Finally with هن, with they group of people, or هم, بيشتروا إلي, they buy for me, or they are buying for me. بيشتروا إلي. And when people soften the pronunciation by deleting the sound before the L, it will become بيشتروا لي. بيشتروا لي. بيشتروا لي, which means they buy for me. I'll give another read to show you the major difference between both when people tend to soften and drop the A. Let's see. بشتري إلك. بشتري لك. بشتري إلك. بشتري لك. بتشتري إله. بتشتري له. بنشتري إلكن. بنشتري لكن. بتشتروا إلها. بتشتروا لها. بيشتري إلنا. بيشتري لنا. بتشتري إلك. بتشتري لك. بيشتروا إلي. بيشتروا لي. Great guys, and that's the pronunciation. But you might now ask, well, why do I have the preposition L? The short answer in Arabic, it doesn't really work. Because in English, you would say, I bought you a cup of coffee. So there, the verb to buy in English is a transitive verb. But in Arabic, the verb is intransitive and it can't work. So you can't approach somebody, you would say بشتريك, because then the literal translation for it, it will become, or it will mean, I buy you. And I'm not sure the other person will take it very well. And I think that's called modern slavery. So you can't buy a person. Therefore, we need to bring the preposition il. And you would say بشتري إلك. بشتري إلك شاي. I'm going to buy you a tea. So you would say بشتري إلك شاي. I would like to buy you a cup of tea. بدي اشتري إلك شاي. Or بشتري لك شاي. I'll buy you a tea. So therefore, certain verbs in English are transitive, but that doesn't mean necessarily they're transitive in Arabic. And this topic I'm going to have a look at another time to talk about transitive and intransitive verbs in Arabic. Great, guys. I hope you really enjoyed the session. Thank you all very much for watching. Till next time, stay safe. Ma salame.